A common question that we get is what happens if I have a 529 plan and then my child does not go to college? Or what happens if they get a scholarship? So the way that those two scenarios work is actually pretty similar, so I'm going to talk about them together. The first thing to know is that 529 plan money can be used for a lot of things. It's not just for college. Ever since 529 plans were introduced in the 90s, you could use the money for vocational training programs, graduate school, and college. Really any place that accepts U.S. federal student loans. So it's really broad. And additionally, through changes to the law in 2017 and 2019, you can now use 529 plan money for even more things. You can use it for up to $10,000 a year in K-12 tuition. That's at private, public, or religious schools, although, let's be real, most public schools do not have $10,000 of annual tuition expense. But then through changes to the law in 2019, you can also use the money at approved apprenticeship programs and even for up to $10,000 of student loan repayment. So it's really flexible. Now, the other thing to know is that you can move 529 plan money between members of a family. In fact, the IRS publishes a long list of all the different relatives that you can transfer 529 plan money to without incurring any type of penalty. It includes the folks that you would expect, like moving money to siblings, but it also includes a broader list of people, going out to even first cousins. And you can also just let anything that's left over in the account sit there, and then if it's some future date, there are additional members of your family, say like future grandchildren or a niece or a nephew is born, you can consider changing the beneficiary to that person at that time. So it's really flexible. Now let's say that none of that applies to you, and you look across your situation and you say, you know what, there are no educational expenses in my family that I wish to cover. I just want to take the money back. Now let's talk through what happens there. And I'm going to talk about what happens with federal taxes first. Now, let's imagine that in this scenario, you had contributed a total of $20,000 to a 529 plan over a number of years, and market gains had increased your account by another $30,000 so that the total balance was $50,000. We're going to walk through what would happen if you just said, you know what, I'm taking that full $50,000 back. Now, the $20,000 that you contributed would come back to you free and clear. That was your money when you put it in, it's your money when you take it out, no taxes, no penalty. Now, where you have to be careful is on that $30,000 of gains in this example. You'll have to declare those gains as income, and that means that you'll pay income tax. And additionally, because you were using a 529 plan, but not using the withdrawal for an approved expense, you'll also owe a 10% penalty at the federal level. Now, if you're in a state that has income tax, you want to be very careful because the rules vary by state, but typically the state will want to collect any taxes due on the gains as well. And if you're in a state where there is a tax deduction for contributing, you may have to pay back some of the deduction that you took previously too. And it can get a little bit complicated, so if that's your situation, it can be a good idea to work with a professional to make sure that you get it right. Now, what happens if your child gets a scholarship? It's actually pretty similar to what we just went through. The only difference is that you don't owe a penalty on the amount that's equal to the scholarship. So in that example, if say your child had received a $10,000 scholarship, you would still have to pay income tax on the withdrawal that's equal to the $10,000 of scholarship, but you would not owe that 10% penalty. To be clear, if you took out more than that as a non-qualified withdrawal, then you would have to pay the penalty on the portion that's not equal to what you contributed plus the scholarship money. So that's how that works. Feel free to reach out with any questions. We're at aboveboardfinancial.com.